Welcome to Books and Storytime by mybooksummary.com. Let's explore the transformation of Cinderella. Once upon a time, in a grand estate nestled amidst rolling hills, there lived a wealthy man with his beloved wife. As illness drew near, the wife, knowing her time was short, called her only daughter Cinderella to her bedside. "My dear child," she said gently, "when I'm gone, remember to be kind and good-hearted. God will watch over you, and I will be with you from heaven." With these words, she closed her eyes for the last time, leaving Cinderella to mourn her loss. Cinderella's father, burdened by grief and the need for someone to care for his daughter, eventually remarried. His new wife was a widow with 2 daughters of her own. While the father traveled often for work, Cinderella was left under the care of her wicked stepmother and stepsisters, who treated her with disdain and cruelty. Instead of the cherished daughter she once was, Cinderella became little more than a servant in her own home, doing all the chores and enduring harsh treatment. One day, as Cinderella swept the floor, her stepsisters sat comfortably, eating fruits and carelessly tossing the peels onto the ground. Their mother, coming in, scolded Cinderella for the mess, though it was her daughters who had created it. "Lazy girl," she snapped. "You can't even clean properly." Cinderella bowed her head and set to work, scrubbing the floor until it was spotless. Despite her best efforts, she was constantly berated and given only the scraps of food that remained after her stepsisters had eaten. Each night, Cinderella slept in the cold attic, her bed a mere pile of straw. Alone and hungry, she would cry herself to sleep. Yet, even in her sorrow, she found solace in the companionship of little creatures. The rats and birds of the house, sensing her loneliness, became her friends and comforted her in her darkest moments. One day, the king announced a grand ball at the palace, inviting all the young maidens in the kingdom. The prince would choose a bride from among them. The announcement created a buzz of excitement throughout the land. Cinderella's stepsisters were particularly thrilled, preening and preparing with great anticipation. "Make sure you help us get ready, Cinderella," they demanded, as if it were a great privilege for her to assist them. "The prince might choose one of us." Cinderella longed to attend the ball as well, to see the splendor of the palace and perhaps even dance with the prince. "Can I go too?" she asked timidly. "I would love to see the palace and the ball." Her stepsisters and stepmother scoffed at her. "You have nothing to wear and no chance of getting noticed. Just stay home and clean," they said dismissively. As the day of the ball approached, Cinderella felt a pang of sadness but remained hopeful. She remembered her mother's wedding gown, which had been tucked away in the attic. Though it was old and tattered, she decided to mend it. With the help of her little animal friends, she worked tirelessly to repair and clean the gown. Just as she was finishing, a magical transformation occurred. Her fairy godmother appeared with a wave of her wand. "Don't cry, dear child," said the fairy godmother. "I will help you attend the ball." With a sparkle of magic, Cinderella's ragged dress turned into a stunning gown of shimmering blue. Glass slippers appeared on her feet, sparkling like diamonds. The pumpkin in the garden was transformed into a magnificent carriage, and the mice into elegant horses. The birds became the coachman. "But what about my stepsisters and stepmother?" Cinderella asked. "Won't they recognize me?" "Don't worry," said the fairy godmother with a smile. "They won't recognize you. But remember, you must return by midnight. The magic will wear off then." With a final wave, Cinderella set off for the ball. When she arrived at the palace, the entire ballroom fell silent. All eyes turned towards her. Her stepsisters and stepmother, unable to recognize the beautiful stranger, were left speechless. The prince, enchanted by Cinderella's beauty, approached her immediately. "May I have the honor of this dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Cinderella, overwhelmed but thrilled, accepted. The prince and Cinderella danced together all night. It was as if time stood still, with the prince's eyes never leaving her face. They were lost in each other's company, dancing and talking as if they had known each other forever. As the clock began to strike midnight, Cinderella suddenly remembered the fairy godmother's warning. Panicking, she fled the ballroom, leaving one of her glass slippers behind. The prince tried to follow, but she had already disappeared into the night. Determined to find her, the prince ordered his men to search the kingdom. They went from house to house, trying the glass slipper on every young woman they encountered. Finally, they arrived at Cinderella's home. Her stepsisters were eager to try on the slipper, but it was too small for them. When the prince's men asked if there were any other girls in the house, the stepmother hastily tried to cover up Cinderella's presence. But one of the men noticed the attic door and, upon inspecting it, found Cinderella hidden away. He brought her down, and the glass slipper fit perfectly. The prince, overjoyed, knelt before Cinderella. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice full of hope and affection. "Yes," Cinderella replied, tears of joy streaming down her face. The prince took her hand and kissed it, and they returned to the palace together. The king and queen welcomed Cinderella with open arms, and the wedding was a grand affair. Cinderella's father was invited to the wedding and was reunited with his daughter. The stepsisters and stepmother, witnessing Cinderella's happiness, were left to reflect on their own actions. Cinderella and the prince were married and lived happily ever after, their love shining as brightly as the glass slippers that had brought them together. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Head over to www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share the magic with friends. And let's grow together through the power of books and interesting stories.